In the freezing November of 1943, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the legendary Desert Fox, was appointed by Adolf Hitler to inspect the defensive fortifications stretching from Denmark to the Spanish border. What German propaganda proudly hailed as the impenetrable Atlantic Wall, Rommel quickly discovered to be a dangerous hollow myth. Most sectors consisted of nothing more than open beaches, unfinished concrete bunkers, and isolated gun batteries with zero depth or defensive coordination. Rommel was furious, knowing that when the massive Allied invasion force arrived, the current defenses would be breached within hours. He argued that the battle must be won on the very beaches, in the first 24 hours of the landing, or Germany would be utterly crushed by the Allies' overwhelming industrial and air superiority. In this alternate timeline, Hitler, deeply shaken by Rommel's scathing report, grants him absolute dictatorial authority over all defensive resources in the West, overriding the old guard generals. Rommel immediately launches the most colossal engineering and industrial mobilization in European history, redirecting millions of tons of concrete, steel, and chemical explosives away from other military projects directly to the coastlines of France. With absolute strategic control, Rommel transformed the coast of France into a terrifying, lethal fortress of unprecedented scale. He realized that conventional artillery and concrete bunkers were not enough to halt the Allied juggernaut. Instead, Rommel focused on a simple, brutal, and highly cost-effective strategy: mass-producing landmines and beach obstacles to saturate every potential landing zone. German factories were ordered to manufacture Rommel's defensive designs by the tens of millions. Specialized non-metallic glass mines and wooden box mines, virtually undetectable by Allied metal detectors, were laid in dense, layered grids along the beaches and shallow tidal zones. Millions of steel hedgehogs, tetrahedrons, and wooden stakes topped with explosive artillery shells were driven into the sand to tear open the hulls of landing craft at high tide. Inland, open fields were blanketed with thousands of explosive-rigged anti-glider poles, famously known as Rommel's asparagus. By May 1944, Rommel had successfully deployed over 70 million active landmines along the French coastline, creating an impenetrable defensive barrier that was 10 times denser than the historical defenses. On the stormy morning of June 6, 1944, the ultimate day of reckoning arrived as the massive Allied armada emerged from the English Channel mists. As the first waves of Higgins boats and landing craft rushed towards the beaches of Normandy, they did not crash into a poorly defended coastline, but rather a dense, terrifying labyrinth of active explosives. Landing craft were systematically ripped apart by submerged mines and explosive-tipped stakes before they could even hit the wet sand, leaving thousands of Allied soldiers struggling in deep, blood-stained water. Those who managed to reach the shore found themselves trapped in a dense, lethal grid of millions of S-mines and bouncing Bettys, while heavy machine guns fired from indestructible, interlocking concrete bunkers. Overhead, Allied airborne divisions fared no better, as thousands of paratroopers and gliders descended directly into fields saturated with Rommel's explosive-rigged glider traps, causing catastrophic casualties before they could even organize. The beach landings rapidly devolved into a horrifying, unprecedented slaughter. By midday, with the beaches choked with burning wreckage and thousands of casualties, General Dwight D. Eisenhower was forced to issue the devastating order to retreat. Without the sudden, dramatic Allied breakthrough in Normandy in the summer of 1944, the war in Europe would have devolved into a much longer, more exhausting and brutal war of attrition. The Soviet Union, though slowly pushing the Germans back on the Eastern Front, would face a heavily fortified and static German defense, as Wehrmacht divisions were not destroyed in the West. Keeping their forces supplied with aviation fuel and trucks through the secure northern and Pacific Lend-Lease corridors, the Red Army would have slowly ground down the overextended German divisions at a massive cost in human lives. Meanwhile, the Western Allies would have proceeded with their strategic bombing of Germany's synthetic oil plants, completely cutting off the Reich's industrial core and starving its population. By 1945, as the Soviet steamroller slowly pushed the Germans back, the United States and Great Britain would have finalized their strategic plans. Rather than ending in May 1945, the war in Europe would have dragged on into 1946 or 1947, culminating in the deployment of the first atomic weapons against German military targets. Rommel's wall succeeded on paper, but in the end, it only prolonged the inevitable destruction of the Nazi regime. By the spring of 1945, Rommel's completed Atlantic Wall had successfully spared Germany a rapid defeat, but it only served to delay the inevitable on a global scale. While the Western Front remained a static, heavily mined stalemate, and the Eastern Front devolved into a grueling war of attrition, the United States was rapidly finalizing a secret weapon that would render all conventional fortifications completely obsolete. On August 6, 1945, the atomic bomb was ready. Unlike the historical timeline, the first operational atomic bomb was not dropped on Japan, but rather directly on a major German military and industrial hub, such as Berlin or the Ruhr Valley. The terrifying, colossal blast completely incinerated the target city, vaporizing entire German divisions and shattering the Reich's remaining will to fight. Realizing that no amount of concrete, steel, or landmines could protect them from a weapon that could erase entire cities in a single second, the German High Command surrendered unconditionally. Rommel's defensive masterpiece had succeeded in holding the beaches, but in doing so, it had only paved the way for Germany to become the tragic launchpad of the nuclear age, dragging World War II out to a devastating end in 1946.